Hi there. In this episode, synth lore, the Casio Vl-Tone Vl. I'm going to discuss my feelings about the Casio Vl-Tone, including some interesting history. I'm also going to give you a hands-on demo of its programmable synthesizer capabilities, and I'm using synthesizer here very loosely. I'll also go over all the specs and all the features, including some sound demos. I'll show you how to program the synthesizer portion of the instrument, and I'll demo a Kontakt instrument that I made. This is a classic 70s/80s keyboard. A lot of keyboard aficionados owned one of these keyboards back in the 80s. Friends of mine that were keyboardists often owned one of these keyboards. I owned one circa 1984, and I don't know what happened to it, but I purchased another one. If I were to do a Casio keyboard top 11 list, the VL-Tone would place in the top 5, along with the likes of the CZ101 and the CZ5000. I might even rate it number 1, but I'd have to think about that more deeply. It wouldn't be for its sounds or its features. It's probably just because I'm so nostalgic about this keyboard. The VL-Tone was released in 1979. I recall seeing it for sale at Radio Shack, which is where you purchased electronics back in those days. The original retail price was $69.95. That was pretty expensive for 1979, but electronics of this type was expensive in 1979. Memory was expensive, chip yields were low, and that kept prices high. Chips were just starting to find their way into everyday consumer electronics. A lot of articles you may read online call the VL-Tone the first commercially available synthesizer. I feel it's okay for everyday folks to believe that statement, but as keyboardists, we know that's not true. Everyday folks haven't heard of Moog, ARP, sequential circuits, and others. If you want to call it the first pocket-sized keyboard, that's probably fine. I'm not including the likes of the stylophone. Also, if you want to call the VL-Tone the first pocket-sized synthesizer, I would say, okay, but just know that that's a stretch. That brings me to the specs, starting with the major functions. First, it's a calculator with the standard 4 operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. A square root function, a percentage function, a constant function, and a memory. Second, it's a monophonic keyboard with 6 easily accessible tones and 4 more that are accessed through the pseudo synthesizer option. Third, it has that pseudo synthesizer option that makes it really cool, and you can modify all 10 preset tones. Fourth, it has 10 preset rhythms. Fifth, it is a 100-note step sequencer, but it's really more than a step sequencer. Now it's time to do the hands-on demo, and I'll demo all these features for you. Time for the hands-on demo. Here's the VL1 inside of its case. The case came with the unit when you bought it back in the day. It's pretty nice. It's kind of a off-white. It's got some beige stitching around the side. It's got a press stud here. I like to put my fingernail in there and open it that way. A lot of people just pull it open, and sometimes when you see them for sale, you'll find that it's torn here. So you want to be careful about that. Some units have started to turn a little bit yellow over time. This one is still pretty white, which is kind of nice. It looks very, very good, in very good condition. Here is the underside of the unit. On one end, we have the battery compartment, 4 AA batteries. Also on the battery compartment, we have this little foot. We have another matching foot on the other end. This is nice when you have it setting on something. It protects the bottom of the device and also whatever you're setting it on. We have 2 recessed controls, a button called the P button and a rotary potentiometer for adjusting the tuning, which allows you to go plus or minus 100 cents. This P button here is kind of like a reset button. The manual suggests that you press this button whenever you replace the batteries or whenever you're operating it from external power. On the bottom here, we also have some text. See if I can get that close enough for you to read it. What I find interesting on here is Casio Computer Company Limited, 0.6 watts. On the back edge of the unit, you have two connectors. One for DC in, and that's 6 volts, and one for a 3.5 millimeter output jack. And this is a line output, and it's a pretty clean signal. This time I'm going to put a little post-it pad under here just to lift up the back edge to stop glare on the screen. At this point, I want to talk a little bit about the layout of the front panel. Over here we have the speaker. The nice thing about this speaker is it will not distort, even at max volume. That's not true of a lot of electronics you buy these days. Next we have the display. It's 8 characters plus some superscript characters, like the memory character. Next we have 2 sliders, one for the master volume and one for the balance between the rhythm sounds and the melody sounds. Next we have a 3-position octave switch. The entire keyboard is 29 keys. That's 2 octaves and a major third. We can switch it from the middle position down to low, and that will take it down an octave. From the middle position, we can also go to high, and that will take it up an octave. That gives you an entire range of 4 octaves and a major third. Next up, we have a 6-position tone selector. I'm calling them tones. I suppose you could call them instruments. We have piano, fantasy, violin, flute, guitar, and ADSR, which is where we're going to program our own sounds. Last but not least, we have a 4-position selector for our primary functioning mode. Currently it's off. The next position is CAL, which is calculator. Then we have record, REC, and that's for recording a sequence. Then we have play, and this is where you can just play rhythms and play melody. Let's start with the calculator. The layout of the keyboard is such that all the calculator functions are below the buttons. This is mostly true, and all the music functions are above the buttons. So for our calculator here, we've got a plus minus, a decimal point, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we have a division sign, multiplication, subtraction, addition, and an equal sign. Along this row of buttons, we have AC for all clear, C for clear, a square root function, a percentage function, MC for memory clear, MR for memory recall, M minus for memory minus, and M plus for memory plus. Let's do a basic calculation. We can say 34 plus 11 equals 45. Basic calculator functions. We can do an all clear. We can choose 64 and press the square root, and we get 8. It's a good little calculator, but most people have other ways of calculating things these days, like using your phone. Next up, let's take a look at just playing tones and the rhythms. Now it's time to play some tones and demo the rhythms. First of all, I'm going to play each tone and let you hear the tone. So right now we're on piano. I want to put the octave selector in the middle, and here we go. Not exactly a Bosendorfer or C7, but not a bad sound. Here's the fantasy sound, and it's kind of famous for this sound. It's kind of a pretty sound. Next we have violin, and I'm going to shift up an octave for this. Not a bad sound. Next we have flute. We'll leave it in this octave. Not bad. Next we have guitar. Not going to win any awards with that. Here's ADSR. And what's nice is once you've programmed a sound into the ADSR, even if you turn the unit off, it's going to retain that sound for when you turn it on again. So you will have access to 6 sounds right here. So let's see what sound I have programmed. It's kind of an interesting sound. Fairly percussive. Let's take a look at the rhythms now. Time to take a look at some of the rhythms. There are 10 pre-programmed rhythms. In order to play those rhythms, you want to be in play, you want to press the rhythm button, and then press one of the 10. Here's the march. Now I can vary the tempo by using these tempo buttons. The maximum value is 9. It's unfortunate that it's not BPM. There's 19 values, 9 up, 9 down, and there's 0. Not a bad sound. Let's try our waltz. Sounds like 3/4 to me. Let's try our 4 beat. The swing. This one I really like. There's rock 1. Now we only have those 2 sounds for our rhythm section, the click and the white noise. It's not bad. Here's rock 2. Here's bossa nova. Samba. Rumba. And begin. To stop the rhythm from playing, I can just hit the reset button here. Now, if I want to play melody along with the rhythm, all I do is select a rhythm, pick a sound, and that, of course, is the start of the pre-programmed sound. If I pressed music, you would hear it. At the end of the episode, I'm going to play that in its entirety. using the line out. And it's a pretty clean signal, and you'll hear the whole musical demo. It's a pretty good demo of both the rhythms and the melody sounds. It's only about 1 minute and 16 seconds long, but you may want to stick around for that. I think now it's time to take a look at the sequencer. I've already switched over to the record mode here. By pressing autoplay, it will play the sequence that I already recorded, and it remembers this after you turn the unit off. Let's go ahead and press it. Now what is nice is I can switch it to a different sound. Say, let's do the fantasy sound. The sequencer will not remember the octave position, but you can just replay the sequence at that octave. You can also move the octave button while it's playing. It would be nice if it remembered that information in the sequencer, but it doesn't. To clear the sequencer, I'm going to press MLC, Melody Clear. Now if I hit the autoplay, there's nothing there. But we can go ahead and play in something on the piano, something simple. Let's play that back. Now you'll notice there's a little flashing minus sign here, and that's essentially the tempo that it thinks it's recording, and you really want to match that if you want it to sound smooth and even. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. We'll do one more. It's very nice that it records the gliss the way you play it. It's not bad. Now I would call the sequencer less of a step sequencer, more like tape, which is really nice. If you're not a musician, you're going to find this easier to play as far as recording your own sequences and have them play back the same way you played them in. Next, I think it's time to take a look at programming our own sounds. Before I show you how to program your own sounds, I want to take you to another screen and explain it to you. And then we'll come back here and actually program some sounds. And I think this will make it more clear. Here's a page I created. I'm calling this Casio VL-One Synth Basics. This is a good reference page for you if you're new to this. In our first column, we have the basic tones. They're labeled 0 through 9. We have piano, fantasy, violin, flute, guitar 1, guitar 2, English horn, and then 3 electro sounds. In the next column, it says, programming a synth sound requires an 8-digit number. The syntax is. And there you have the 8 digits, and it tells you what they mean. For digit 1, you have the basic tone. So when you're typing in your 8-digit number, you would look over to your basic tones and decide what you want your sound to be based on. Let's look at digits 7 and 8, because those are easy to talk about. Vibrato and tremolo. For the vibrato value, you can enter a number between 0 and 9 as part of your 8-digit number. A 0 will mean no vibrato. A 1 will mean very light vibrato, and a 9 will mean very intense vibrato. Digit 8 is tremolo. 0 will mean no tremolo, 1 will mean very light tremolo, and 9 will mean very intense tremolo. Digits 2 through 6 are essentially our ADSR values. If you're a synth person, you're probably already familiar with ADSR. I'm talking here about attack time, decay time, sustain time, and release time. You also get one additional value, the sustain level. And this is essentially the volume of that sustain. If you enter an attack time of 0, essentially there will be no attack time. It will be very percussive. 1 will be a very quick attack time, and 9 will be a very slow attack time. That's also true of decay, sustain time, and release time. So if you enter a 9 for the release time, the sound will fade out over a long period of time. Next up, we have example codes. The English horn sound is right out of the manual. You can see that the first digit is a 6, and if you go back over and look at the basic tones, 6 equals English horn. If you look at the last digit is a 0, and if you look down at the 8th digit in our second column, that's tremolo, so we have no tremolo. If you look at the second to last digit, it's a 3. That means relatively light vibrato for the 7th digit. I also created some other sounds for you. If you're not expecting too much, you won't be disappointed. I tried to use a selection of the different basic tones so you could get an idea of what it's capable of, but it's very limited. Lastly, the final column, programming a sound, and I'll demo this on the machine in just a moment. First, you want to set the primary switch to CAL. That's the calculator mode. Then you want to set the tone switch to ADSR. Then you want to press the button ML-C. That's the melody clear function, but in this particular case, it will clear the sound. Then you'll type in your 8-digit code, and you can try some that I provided for you. You can try that English horn sound, or you can just pick a random 8-digit number and see what you get. Then you want to press the M+ button. This is over on the far right. Set the primary switch to play, and now you can play the keyboard. Hopefully this is all clear to you, but you can always come back here and look at this screen again. Time to do it on the actual machine. Okay, welcome back. Here we go. Let's program in this English horn sound. So first, I want to make sure I'm in calculator mode, and I am. I want to make sure my tone selector is in ADSR, which I am. I want to make sure that I've cleared the memory. And if you saw the little memory sign here, now it's gone, and it's ready for me to enter a value. So let's enter this value, 6, 1, 0, 7, 9, 1, 3, 0. Then we want to hit this memory plus right here. Okay, let's put it in play. It says that it's an English horn. Oh my gosh, Spitfire Audio is out of business. Probably not. Let's try something else. The beauty here is if you don't want to learn how to program sounds and you're really not a synthy type person, you can just type in a random 8-digit number and you'll get something. Probably the most important value is the first number because that's your bass tone. So if we want to take the fantasy tone, we'd want something that starts with a 1. So that means the fantasy tone because the piano is 0. And then we can just type in some values. There's 5, 6, and then just go 7, 8, which would be no vibrato, and no tremolo. Then we're going to hit memory plus. We're going to switch it over to play. So that's pretty much it for programming the device. Hopefully I made that relatively clear. It's a lot of fun to play this device. It's got a lot of features for as small as it is, and it's pocket-sized. If you get bored, you can surely play a game on your phone, or you can pull out your Casio Vl-Tone and have some fun. Here we are looking at Kontakt 7. And I'm just going to play you the 5 basic tones that are immediately available on the Casio VL1. This is a sample instrument that I created, and I did it a while back, and I think I probably did it with something like Kontakt 4 or 5. It was a long time ago, and it's not hugely multi-sampled. If you take a look here, just bring this up, open this up, you can see there's only 3 samples. And with something like Fantasy, where there is a lot of vibrato, in the middle it's going to sound kind of okay. But way down, you're going to hear how that vibrato slows down. And up high, it's going to be very fast. I did this because if I ever needed to use the Casio VL1 in any kind of production, I didn't want to have to pull it out and plug it in and set it all up. This way I could just use it in Kontakt, use it right inside my DAW. And I didn't think I'd need a very good quality recording of it. I could go back and sample it in a more meaningful way, and I might do that one day, but not right now. So here's an example of this. Here's the Fantasy. I think that sounds pretty good. The flute sound. Guitar. Piano. Just because I like it. It sounds pretty good for a piano. I think that's every bit as good as a Juno 106. To me, it sounds kind of like a pianette, somewhere between a piano and a clavinet. And last but not least, our 5th tone, a violin. So there you have it. It's a sampled instrument. You could create your own, and you could multi-sample it and make it a much better quality instrument. You can probably tell I'm a fan of the VL1. I don't take it off the shelf to play it very often, but when I'm feeling nostalgic, I will. There are a lot of features packed into this tiny package. Considering it came out in 1979, it has a calculator, a rhythm player, a keyboard tone engine, a sequencer, and a weird pseudo synthy functionality. It's beyond cool. You used to be able to pick them up around $30. Now a nice unit will cost you between $70 and $100. Generally, I find more available on eBay than on Reverb, and they tend to be less expensive on eBay. There is a rebranded unit made by Casio, but bearing the Radio Shack realistic name, called the ConcertMate 200. I've never held one, nor have I played one, but from everything I've read, it's an identical unit as far as functionality. Personally, I would want the original VL1, but you have options. When I've seen the ConcertMate 200s for sale, they tend to be less expensive than the VL1. Also, you'll often see the original VL1s for sale in non-working condition at a substantially reduced price. Personally, I wouldn't risk it unless you are a techie type person and think you can source any failed parts. Stick around after my closing for the song demo if you're interested. It's just over a minute and it's a really good demo of the sounds of the main tones and the rhythm section. Like I said, I'm a fan of the VL1. You should also know that there's a VL5 and a VL10, and I believe those are 4-voice polyphonic. The problem with them is they don't have the synthy function because they don't have the calculator function. Hopefully I haven't wasted your time. Take care, and I'll be back in another episode soon.